Good morning, everyone. Welcome to York for this meeting of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority Audit and Governance Committee. I think it might be helpful if we just run around the table, because I think there's some first-time attendees and I don't recognise quite all the faces around the table, or at least I've not remembered them properly. So, Dave Veritau, I'm one of the City of York Council representatives and chair of the committee. If we go around to my left, and the other thing is, if you could turn your boards so that they face towards me, that would be helpful as well. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Clark. I'm the Governance and Assurance Manager at the Combined Authority.
Good morning, I'm Rachel Antonelli. I'm the Monitoring Officer at the Combined Authority.
Morning, I'm Philip Broadbank, North Yorkshire Councillor, Fairfax Starbeck.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Caroline Goodrick. I am a North Yorkshire councillor and I represent Derwent and Sheriff Hutton Division.
Andrew Hollier, City of York Council.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ellie Horsley, the Audit Manager of the 23-24 External Audit.
Mark Outside Engagement Lead for the audit.
Matt Waters, City of York Councillor.
I'm Stuart Cutts. I'm an Assistant Director on the audit side for Veritau, who are providing a number of services for the Combined Authority.
Morning, everybody. I'm Clive Pearson, North Yorkshire Councillor. I represent Esk Valley and Coast.
Rachel Melly, I'm a councillor on City of York Council.
Morning, everyone. I'm Mike Russell. I'm the Director of Resources and Section 73 Officer at the Combined Authority.
Morning, I'm Will Baines from Democratic Services at the Combined Authority, but also North Yorkshire Council.
Thanks, everyone, and I perhaps should have congratulated some of the new appointees since our last meeting, and very much welcome them there. And Councillor Cliff Lunn is now joining us. So we therefore have no apologies. And in terms of the minutes of the last meeting held on the 16th of July, we did have a slightly fuller discussion that has been minuted on the issue of a vice chair of the committee, and got a suggested amendment to the minutes. If Will would like to read that out, please.
Thanks, Chair. So the suggested amendment under item 1 is that a discussion was also held on appointing a vice chair of the Audit and Governance Committee to help ensure involvement and engagement across the two constituent councils. Councillor Lunn expressed an interest in that role, which was welcomed. This issue was to be taken away by officers and brought back to the next meeting.
Okay. Are people happy with that amendment? Okay, thank you. Are we therefore happy to agree the minutes as amended? Take that as assent. Thank you very much. Okay, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? No. Okay, thank you. Public participation.
No statements or questions received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, in that case, we're on to item 5, the Veritau progress reports.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Stuart Cutts. I'm Assistant Director with Veritau, and on the internal audit side, I am leading the work. Colleagues in different departments are leading the other side, but I can provide an update in those areas as well, as the report has done. With the internal audit side, with the appointment of Mike in the last couple of months, we've started to map out and plan the work. And in the paragraphs up to paragraph 13, we explain a little bit more about where we were when I wrote the report. Meetings this week with officers covering all three of those audits are to take place. And so we hope following those to be able to prioritise aspects of scope, timings, and to just get on with some of the work. And in paragraph, I think 7 or 8, I mentioned that the initial thinking is to focus with the creditor side of things first, but we'll understand that a little bit more once we've met with officers tomorrow morning. The audit side, I suppose, is needed to wait a little bit to allow certain things to progress from Mike to be in post, whereas the meaty part of our update on the information governance side, which is from paragraph 13 onwards, provides greater detail on the work that's been ongoing in the first half of the year, touching on some of the work that we do with our data protection and ICO contact responsibilities. Hopefully they're clearly stated, and if members have any questions on the content, I'll do my best to respond to them. The two parts of the Veritau progress report cover risk management and counter fraud. Risk management is an area where we're kind of involved to a degree, and we explain more in the report, but it's up to management to start to develop those arrangements. And likewise, as I mentioned, with the internal audit side, we're meeting with Mike again next week to start to help establish how best we can support the wider organisation, pulling together those key policies and risk registers to help demonstrate some of the work that's going on in the organisation. I suppose if I leave the report as written, I appreciate all members will have read, and if there's any questions on any aspect of the report, as I say, I'll do my best to provide a response here.
Just from the briefing Cliff and I had beforehand, I think one thing might be helpful, and that's just to explain what's going to happen in regard to the accounts for the 2 months of last year and how they're to be handled. I don't know whether Mike wants to
just
pick up
that's
on that.
the next item, Chair. It's Mazars who do that audit.
Right. Okay. Okay. So we'll pick that up on the next. Okay.
And then, thank you very much for that report. We agree to note that. Okay, thank you. Right, item 6.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, but I'll highlight the key messages from the report for you this morning. So section 1 of the report highlights our approach to the 23-24 audit in the context of the backstop arrangements and legislation, which is currently in front of Parliament. We expect that to come into legislation in early November. As highlighted, we've not received the accounts or working papers for the 23-24 accounts. We've therefore taken the decision to place the 23-24 accounts into the February 25 backstop arrangements. So while this is a tough decision, the firms have to make a judgment on audits that they think it can realistically complete before these backstop dates come into force. As you'll appreciate, we're currently working with other clients to finalise 22-23 accounts and 23-24 accounts before the respective backstop dates. This is therefore putting significant pressures on audit teams to deliver an awful lot of work before those dates come into force. We do plan to complete the reduced backstop procedures for 23-24, including our value for money reporting arrangements, then build back assurance for 24-25, which would currently cover the 14 months period for the 23-24 2-month accounts and the full year. We're working with Mike and his team to ensure that we can deliver this. And as previously mentioned, we will complete our full value for money work for 23-24. We expect this to focus on the authorities' arrangements to ensure reporting and accounts production arrangements are in place, covering both years. We also expect to cover the governance and scrutiny arrangements in place to manage the adoption of the new functions that are coming down the line for the combined authority and how we work with partners. I don't propose to take any to say any more about the report, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Are there any questions? No. Cliff?
I think we're clear what we've got to do because of the A, the 2 months, and B, the backstop. And I know it's difficult for all auditing at this time, and I fully endorse what you're doing. Thank you.
I think it's also worth putting it into the context. It's 2 months worth of accounts. It's not like a full year. So obviously on that risk profile, we're not expecting lots of complex transactions going through in those 2 months. So building back that assurance for 24, 25 will be a lot easier than, for example, another council or something like that, where it'd be 2 years worth of work.
Okay, if there are no other questions, can we agree to note that report? Thank you. Item 7, which was the subject of a supplementary agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to an update around the Constitution. The report provides members with an update on the review of the Constitution, which members will recall at the last meeting, it was agreed a working group would be set up. The report also brings to the attention of members amendments made to the Constitution since the last meeting of Audit and Governance. There's also the matter of the Vice Chair for Audit and Governance, which is probably timely to discuss on this report. And when we get to that part, I will refer to Paul, who will be able to report on that for yourselves to make any decision you wish to make. The recommendation before members today is to note the report. In terms of the first element of the report, which is an update on the Constitution review, as I've said, at the last meeting, it was agreed a working group would be established. The first meeting of the working group will take place on the 29th of October, including councillors Lunn, Goodrick, Hollier and Merritt. This first meeting will scope the method and plan for the review and set a timetable for work to be undertaken. There is a slight delay on setting up that working group because it was felt probably timely to wait for the incoming monitoring officer, because this is a large piece of work. So we didn't want to start with interim monitoring officer, deputy monitoring officer arrangements. We wanted to wait until there was a substantive monitoring officer in post to provide that support to the working group. And the Audit and Governance Committee will be regularly updated with progress made by the working group at each meeting as this work develops. In respect to the second part of this report, it relates to amendments to the Constitution which have been made since the last meeting, noting that the Constitution provides that the Audit and Governance Committee is to be consulted on any proposed revisions to the Constitution via a report to the Audit and Governance Committee. That's not been possible because of the timing of the Audit and Governance Committee meetings and the need to move at pace with the suggested amendments which the Combined Authority have approved. So it may be an opportunity for the committee to consider whether they would be happy to accept a proposal to amend the Constitution that I report to you in between meetings and consult with you on that, and I can feed back that consultation to any Combined Authority meeting. I think the reason why it's not possible is because the Combined Authority is new, so we're needing to make some changes to the Constitution at pace, and waiting for the next meeting when we have only 4 meetings in a municipal year sometimes means that I've had to bring it to the Combined Authority before I can consult with yourselves. So that might be something that the committee might want to think about in terms of a proposed amendment, which I could take to the November, if it was felt urgent, Combined Authority meeting, that we make that amendment to the Constitution, that we can consult in between meetings with the Audit and Governance Committee if there is something which urgently needs to go for approval to amend that Constitution. In terms of the amendments that have been made since the last meeting, paragraph 5.2 of the report sets out that there were some delegations given to the Chief Executive of the Combined Authority, and that was at the 22nd of July 2024 meeting. A full list of those delegations can be found at Appendix A. What I have noticed is at Appendix A, the list was the original list, and at the July Combined Authority meeting, there was an amendment to that first decision, which is to make interim changes to the Adult Skills Fund Strategic Skills Plan if there is an emerging economic need, crisis or responsiveness needed. That delegation, it now includes the provision that the Chief Executive has to consult with the Mayor before making any decision. So that was an amendment which isn't on that Appendix A, which was made at that July meeting for members to note. At the 6th of September Combined Authority meeting, minor amendments were made to the terms of reference for the Business Committee. Again, we had to move at pace with that. Appendix B contains a track change copy of the amendments that were approved by the Combined Authority. It included things like changing the name from Business Committee to Business Board, increasing public sector membership to 5 members, increasing also membership from 8 to 10 for the private sector members, and also for the board to co-opt with Combined Authority approval. That provision was removed. You can see all of the track changes at Appendix B, and I'm happy to take any questions on that. Finally, the 2nd of October Combined Authority meeting, there was a further update on the Business Board, and that was increasing the private sector membership of the Business Board to no more than 15 members. The reason for that was because the applications, the number, the range of experience which would benefit the Combined Authority, and also the aims and objectives of the Business Board, it was felt that that amendment was needed, which the Combined Authority approved on the 2nd of October. I'm happy to take any questions. I don't know if I'll now defer to Paul to speak on the Vice Chair matter.
Thanks, Rachel. Yes. I've pulled together a few notes here following the last meeting. As we explained at the beginning, there was a discussion at the last meeting, and we did commit to bringing some information back. It is quite a straightforward matter, appointing a vice chair in usual circumstances, but the reason it needed a bit of further exploration is the fairly unique legislative framework that Combined Authorities sit in, where there are specific regulations applied to these committees that don't necessarily apply to the same committees in local authorities. So we've gone away and we have done a little exploration into this, and there's a few considerations that the committee might want to be mindful of. The legal basis for the chair and vice chair roles of Combined Authorities are in the Local Democracy, Economic Development and Construction Act 2009, rolls off the tongue quite nicely, and some further regulations in the Combined Authorities, Overview and Scrutiny Committees, Access to Information and Audit Committees Order 2017. So these two pieces of legislation require that Combined Authorities have Overview and Scrutiny Committees and Audit Committees in place, and sets out what their roles and remit are. Having examined the legislation, there is provision in both of those for the role of chair at Overview and Scrutiny Committees, and that sets out some qualifications for the role, that it must be an independent person, which it defines, or an appropriate person, which it defines. An appropriate person being a member of the committee who is not of the same political party as the mayor. This doesn't extend to the audit committee, so that's not something that you need to consider in your determinations. When it comes to audit committees, the regulations remain silent. So we're left then with our own constitutional arrangements, which are that the Combined Authority itself, rather than the committee, appoints the chair of Audit and Governance Committee. It doesn't make any reference to the vice chair role for audit committees, except insofar that it says that the committee will make a determination in the absence of the chair, which is a little ambiguous, because you could interpret that as a long-term appointment to cover when the chair isn't available. But I think on reflection, it probably doesn't encapsulate the full role of the vice chair in supporting the committee and the vice chair in agenda management, work programming, attending briefings, and supporting the meetings and so on. So I think it would probably take a tweak to the constitution rather than a wholesale amendment. And so I would defer really to this committee about how you wish to address that. I think, given that the Constitution Working Group's meeting fairly soon, it's probably a task that can be picked up by the working group. Or if you feel you have enough information now to make a recommendation, we could take that away and make a recommendation to the combined authority. I would say the considerations that you might want to bear in mind are whether you wish to consult with the mayor and the combined authority members, which would probably be prudent. Whether you think that the vice chair role should be a committee or a combined authority appointment, and whether, as I say, this should be a working group matter or a committee matter. So I would hand over to you, Chair. I think there's a bit to go at. It's not quite as straightforward as we probably hoped at the last meeting, but I think we've got the information we need to make a recommendation if we wish to.
Well, I'm in members' hands on this. Given some of the difficulties, it might be better if we take it to the Constitution Group, and that will give us time to do the consultations that Paul's suggested. But as I say, I'm in members' hands on this.
Sorry, not used to these ones. I would agree with you. I think it's the way forward, and it will give us clarity on the legality of everything. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, are we happy to proceed on that basis in terms of that particular issue? Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, so that's one thing out of the way. Right. Let's go back to the wider report. You know, it's a key role of the Audit and Governance Committee to ensure that constitutional changes are right. So what's been happening over the last few months, although obviously necessary in the early days of the combined authority for quick decisions to be made, is not satisfactory in terms of our audit and governance overview. So Rachel's suggestions about how we might handle that seem to be a sensible way forward. I don't know if sorry, in terms of us being consulted informally between meetings, and perhaps the responses channeled back to the combined authority via myself as chair in conjunction with the vice chair in due course. Would that be agreeable?
If members chose to do that, we've got a meeting in November, I think the 8th of November, of the combined authority. So if members were minded to make that proposal, to make that amendment to the constitution, I can take it to the November combined authority meeting.
Yeah. Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay. Thank you very much for that decision as well.
Amendment to the recommendation.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll propose that. Is that seconded? Right. Councillors Lunn and Goodrick, take your choice. Thank you. Okay, I better take a vote in favour in that case. Can I see an indication of those in support? Okay, that is unanimously agreed. Thank you very much. Right, now, obviously changes have been made. Does anyone want to raise any questions or comments on the specific changes that have already gone through the authority without our oversight? Councillor Melly.
Thank you, Chair. It's really good to hear that there was so much interest in joining the business board and such a variety of experience as well. I'm just wondering about what you're saying about the numbers that are needed on that board in order to achieve what it's supposed to achieve, because this change means increasing it up to 20 people. And that seems like a lot for one board, one committee. And I'm just wondering how that will affect how well it can function. I appreciate what you're saying about needing a big variety of different experiences on the board, but I think that was already allowed for by there being 8 private sector members and the possibility to co-opt 5 additional members to meet, yeah, that specific experience. Just wondering why it needed to be increased to such a high number.
You can defer to me, Rachel. I may not have the answers, but the only explanation I could probably give in this case is that the panel were fairly astounded by the exceptional response that they had to the recruitment campaign, and the caliber of all of the candidates that came forward was incredibly high. I think feedback that I had from the panel was that they probably could have recruited a board of 50 people if they'd been able to do so, and they wouldn't have been disappointed. I think the first round of applications, there were 117 applications, and they whittled it down eventually to, I think they interviewed 29, and that was a very difficult shortlisting process. So I don't think it was a light decision to request an increase in membership. In terms of the overall governance, there was already that provision for co-options, but I think in reality, there isn't a great distinction between a co-optee on the business board and a full member, because it's not a constituted committee under the Local Government Act. It doesn't have decision-making powers. It's an advisory board. So in terms of voting on matters, there's very little distinction. And the idea is to promote consensus and so on in the way it brings forward recommendations and advice. So I think it's valuable feedback on how it operates with those numbers. I think it'll be challenging. But I think, as ever with these boards, it will remain under review. And if it's not working in future, then the business board may make determinations to hold vacancies or to review its membership. And as ever, this committee could keep a watching brief on its performance as well. So yeah, I think the first meeting will be quite telling. We've got a good venue booked for it. I think the greatest logistical challenge will be finding meeting space for 20 people around the venue. But so far, we've got this year's meetings programmed in, and all being well, it will work quite smoothly.
Okay, if there's no follow-up or right, okay.
Just the other proposed change to the consultation that we were just talking about just now about how we appoint a vice chair, and you're saying you wanted to consult the mayor on that. Would you usually consult, because don't all the constitution changes go to the mayor anyway? Yeah. I'm just thinking that, the mayor is very busy and has a very strategic role in making big decisions across the whole of quite a large area. Is he really looking at small constitution changes before they actually come to him for a decision anyway, when we're the Audit and Governance Committee and it's a governance issue and we've kind of been delegated to look at that sort of thing?
I'd be inclined to agree with you in the sense of proportion of the decision making that you refer to. The reason I include that is I think it'd be remiss of me not to, if it's a political appointment that's being made, not to include him in the conversations, whether the mayor feels that's appropriate to get involved or whether he'd prefer to leave that within the hands of Audit and Governance. I couldn't say, but again, I would defer to the committee and the working group around what you feel is the most appropriate in that situation.
Any further comments? Questions? If not, are we happy to note the report? Thank officers for it. Sorry. As obviously as amended by the previous decisions we've made. Right. Let's move on then to item 8. Which is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review Letter 2024. A really significant document. Shall we? It's basically noting nothing, I think, at this point. So, are we happy to do that? Yeah, it's obviously a formality this time, yes. But next time it could be obviously a very significant document. We happy to note that? Thank you. Item 9 on the agenda then. programme of work.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members can virtually take the work programme as read. I'll repeat my caveat at the last committee meeting when we looked at the first draft of this. It will remain very fluid throughout the first year. Much of the work of the audit committee is looking back retrospectively at the finances and the governance arrangements of the combined authority. And at this stage, we don't have a lot of the information that the committee will be reviewing because we're still in our first year of operation. So there's a lot of matters on here that don't yet have dates ascribed to them. We are hoping to take the new calendar of meetings to the combined authority in November, so we can start work programming beyond April 25 once we have those dates agreed. And hopefully some of these matters which have remained blank for the last couple of meetings, we can start putting dates next to, as well as some of the induction and training sessions at the top, as members identify areas where you might want a few more briefings or training provided. So we're looking ahead to the next meeting in January. Again, we'll have the standing item on the work programme, internal audit, external audit, and then we will continue with a review of constitution, corporate complaints procedure. That does tie in with the last item that members have just noted around the Ombudsman, that as the organisation itself is consolidated and we've taken on police, crime and fire powers and so on, there'll be some consolidation of complaints procedures, etc., which we'll need to put through this committee for review alongside whistleblowing policies and that kind of thing. So as I say, they can take the work programme as read. Welcome any comments that members may have. If there's anything you feel is slightly out of place or any items that you feel may be more urgent that you'd like to bring forward, quite happy to note those now or have a conversation outside of this meeting. But otherwise, just asking members to note the current draft, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments? Mark? Sorry,
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure of the best place to ask this question, but I thought I'd leave it for the work plan. Now that we've got 3 local authorities and there's considerable overlap in function for York and North Yorkshire, I just wonder whether this committee, as part of its governance remit, ought to be looking at whether there's scope for shared working, whether we actually need all these management structures, whether it can be rationalised. I think I've read that combined authority staffing costs were approaching 4.5 million. Surely, as part of our remit, we need to be looking at how it's value for money for the taxpayers. Would that come in as part of the ongoing constitutional review on the 25th of January? Can it be an item that we look at?
Okay, I'll ask Mike to respond on that. I think those are obviously quite important, challenging questions.
Firstly, Councillor, could I just clarify in terms of, you said at the start that there was 3 authorities together. Were you referring to the 2 member local authorities or in terms of us bringing in police and fire? Yeah,
the 3 authorities, and it's the considerable overlap of function that concerns me, that we've now got 3 senior officer structures. And I'm just asking whether there ought to be some consideration of shared working to cut those costs.
I think in the first instance, it's probably worthwhile pointing out that a significant proportion of our back office function is currently serviced through service level agreements with North Yorkshire Council. I don't recognise the number that you mentioned on staffing costs. I'm happy to pick up that with you outside if we can go into that. But currently the staffing of the combined authority is a central core which has some senior officers and the former LEP staff largely. And then since we brought in police and fire, we obviously have a whole fire authority plus the former office of the police crime and fire commissioner as well, those staff. We are at the moment in the early stages of looking at how we bring all those different streams together, but it's quite complex. And a lot of that comes around the governance working group that Rachel's talking about in terms of what we need to do statutorily. But there are a lot of separate challenges in the context of being a combined authority that require a number of senior posts. So it's always one of the things that we are looking at in the context of any decisions that are made or put forward, that we need to ensure and secure value for money. But at the moment, we're in a situation where we have three largely distinct organisations came together on the 7th of May. There's probably some investment to put in to make that work together in a more efficient way, which ultimately may lead to savings. And then moving forward, we need to look at in the context of what else may be coming in down the line in terms of devolution. I would add also that we obviously there's a paper due to go to the combined authority that looks at how we bring together the overall budget for the organisation. That will need to now encompass police and fire, and that will allow a period of challenge and scrutiny to make sure that our members are comfortable with our value for money arrangements as well. And obviously the team at Forvis Mazars are responsible for addressing that as well through some of their work in terms of value for money arrangements. So we have things there, but at the moment there are legal requirements in terms of senior officers, so we cannot have a single head of pay service necessarily across the three local authorities, because there's a specific requirement to have one here. And I'd point to a number of other recommendations that have been made around combined authorities in the context of governance, where arrangements have been made to have quite a streamlined governance structure, and reports have come through which have criticised that ultimately. I think if you look at the arrangements between Tees Valley Combined Authority and the South Tees Development Corporation, for instance, that was one area where government were very keen to ensure there was separate governance and separate leadership to make sure those Chinese walls were properly implemented. Because you'll be aware that local authorities are quite significantly interested in some of the operations of the combined authority, because we do passport a lot of funding down. So having common leadership could create conflicts as well. So it's something we look at in terms of value for money, but there are other considerations that need to take place.
Without being too pedantic, you did say that these arrangements may lead to savings. I think we should be starting on the point of should lead to savings.
I think that's a fair comment, and we'll work towards those as we move along.
Okay, Councillor Broadbank.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think we obviously do need to be careful of how much we take on and all the structures and everything else. We don't overdo it, which there is always an inclination, and sometimes you do find over a period of time that there's far more involved than you expected. I think it would be worth looking at some stage to make sure that the staffing's right and the costs are right as well. It was a worry, a concern of mine when the mayoral job was established, just how much they were taking away from other authorities, and how much the decision-making arrangements and everything else, the structures, because I always thought that what all we needed was, if the government wanted to give the money out, they could give that money to the local authorities involved that were there already, the new authorities, and didn't need the mayoral. But anyway, we've got it now. I think we do need to keep a check on the structures and the costs, because there is a danger that we might find too many people doing the same thing, and I think that's something that we do need to keep checking.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. At a very basic level that ordinary people could understand, it would be very interesting at some point to be getting to a point whereby we could say that for every pound of taxpayers' money via the government that's given to North Yorkshire, that's given to York, and given to the combined authority, how much it costs to administer that mythical pound.
Right. Can I just follow up on that particular debate, Mike? You indicated that there was a report going to the combined authority on combining the budgets. Is there a specific separate piece of work looking at how we rationalise the administration, given all the components to it? I just wanted to be clear on that specific aspect.
There's currently an officers' work stream that is looking at structures. It's not necessarily purely in relation to generating cost savings and efficiencies, because there are a lot of requirements in terms of making sure that we are compliant and legal and safe. So there is a fairly early stage work stream around that, and things are moving along in terms of planning. I think a big part of the requirement is around making sure that the organisation, the sort of below the middle management level, understands its operations. So we had a whole organisational day a week or so ago, which was designed to introduce people, make sure the organisation understands its purpose and the purposes of people within there. And then, as I mentioned, around the budgeting process, we will always focus on making sure that we try to drive value for money through that. So I'm not sure if that answers the question fully.
It does in part. Is there actually a intended report at the end of that management exercise to the combined authority and on the work plan?
Well, we will. Sorry, Chair. We'll produce a medium-term financial plan that will outline what the proposals are at the moment, but it's difficult in the context. If you looked at the recent reorganisation that North Yorkshire took on, it was very complex. There was a lot of resource that needed to go into that, but ultimately it was bringing together a number of organisations that did very similar things. Our challenges are that we have a number of three quite distinct streams of delivery in three quite distinct organisations. So understanding where you can best bring people together around that is quite complex, and it requires some upskilling of me and other senior managers that have not been naturally within police and fire to understand that before we can really move forward with proposals. So as a leadership team, we probably couldn't be in a position to say we need to do a project within a number of months to get us to a point in time. There's still some learning to do around how we pull the organisation together in the right way.
Right. I obviously understand what you're saying there, but I think this is something that we should not lose sight of as a committee. So perhaps you'd care to give some thought as to how in due course we might come back to that and have some more oversight on it. I think that's perhaps as much as is sensible to say at this point. Councillor Goodrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just think it's important that we talk to other combined authorities rather than try and reinvent the wheel. I think we need to know how they've organised themselves and how they deliver now, because there is models out there for us to follow, and I think it's really important that we have those conversations. Thanks, Chair.
It's a very helpful point. Thank you. Right, Rachel, please.
Councillor, we're very alive to that. Every combined authority is different in terms of the powers that it has. In the inception early days, we looked to colleagues in Greater Manchester because they've got the police and fire elements, but they've got other elements we don't have. We have a meeting of all the chief executives. We're setting up a network of all the monitoring officers and likewise the Section 73 officers. So we really do use that learning and that networking, if that gives you some assurance. Thank you.
Councillor Lunn.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree totally with Mark at the end that we do need to look for efficiencies, but it is a very complex thing, as we in North Yorkshire have already found combining 8 authorities. It's not easy, and there are things that you don't think of. And I'm very aware as well of the human side of things, of our employees, and not saying, okay, well, you're sacked. Take it slowly. There's a lot of complications in this, not least of which came out about the Police and Fire Authority having a different pension schemes, and how do we amalgamate that? There's a lot of things we've got to find out and take it slowly. But I agree, we must look for savings, and we must justify the combined authority in that way to the electors. Thank you.
Are there any other points on this report? Can we've obviously had a rather wider debate, but no harm on that at all. Can we agree to note? Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 10, any urgent business? Oh, there's none from officers. Can I just use this slightly? We are meant to have independent representation on this committee, and I think it might be just helpful if officers can update the committee on where we are on that.
Thank you, Chair. We're looking at recruitment of an independent member and an independent person. The independent person to deal with the standard side of this committee, the independent member to sit on this committee effectively. We have gone out for one round of recruitment and we have made some changes as a result of the response rate for that recruitment exercise, and it's currently out for recruitment at the moment. We've split the two roles up. We've done a bit more work to try and reach that. It's a harder to reach. I mean, it's like a tale of two halves. We talked earlier about the business board and committee membership and how there was a massive amount of applications for the independent person, independent member. I think we had 2 applications. So we just want to try and stretch that net a little bit further. So that is underway. I hope to have a report for the next meeting as to, and I'm really hopeful, and I really wish we can say at the next meeting we've got an independent member in, and it is this person, because I think the committee really needs it. So I can update at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. I thought that would be useful for members to know. It's an important part of the requirements for this committee. Okay. Right, no, as I say, no other urgent business. Can I thank you for your attendance and participation and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Cheers.